The human girl's screams abruptly cut short as the alien insectoid's barbed blade pierced her heart, the Evora soldier not yet comprehending the grave mistake of killing a citizen of the Human Alliance. Ryan Davis, a grizzled ex-Marine now serving as a security officer on the human colony world Nova Gaia, heard the distant scream echo across the titanium mines. Alarms blared throughout the colony as Evora troop carriers descended from orbit, disgorging hundreds of insectoid soldiers armored with pulsarifles and chitinous armor onto the planet's surface. These Evora, under the command of the ruthless Captain Weason, had come to seize the rich titanium deposits of Nova Gaia by force. As reports of Evora slaughtering colonists crackled over the comms, Ryan grabbed his rifle and sprinted towards the colony's perimeter. He had to reach the defensive fortifications before the aliens overran the colony, enslaving the surviving humans. Nova Gaia was a young outpost, its defenses still incomplete. If the Evora overwhelmed the perimeter, the entire colony of 20,000 humans would fall to the invasion. Suddenly a bloodied man staggered out from the forest, his miner's uniform shredded by pulse blasts. The colonist collapsed into Ryan's arms, choking out, "They're here! The Evora, killing everyone," before succumbing to his wounds. Ryan's blood ran cold as inhuman screeches, and the sounds of pulse weapons grew louder, the insectoids drawing closer. The cries of dying humans joined the cacophony. He steeled himself for the coming battle, knowing the survival of the colonists now depended on him and the few security officers. Ryan muttered, "Looks like it's time to remind these space roaches what happens when you invade human territory. The Human Alliance doesn't take kindly to alien scum butchering our people. Let's show these Evora bastards how humans make them regret ever setting foot on our planet." With his rifle ready, a determined Ryan advanced into the titanium forests to confront the alien threat, the screams of the murdered girl still echoing in his mind. The Evora would learn to fear humanity's wrath and pay dearly for every drop of human blood spilled on Nova Gaia's soil. Ryan's boots pounded against the metal flooring as he raced through the colony's corridors. He waved his rifle, herding wide-eyed stragglers towards the emergency bunkers. A cluster of scientists in white lab coats huddled together, fear etched on their faces. "They've breached the perimeter," one of the scientists shouted. "We need to evacuate now." Ryan skidded to a stop. "Negative. I'm not abandoning this colony to these bugs. You eggheads lock yourselves in the vault with the civilians. I'll buy you as much time as I can." The scientists hurried off without argument. Ryan ejected his rifle's magazine, counting the rounds. He slapped it back in, then checked his spares. 400 rounds, he muttered. "Gonna make every single one count." He sprinted towards the sounds of pulse fire and inhuman screeches. Rounding a corner, Ryan stumbled into a scene straight out of hell. Dozens of dismembered colonists lay strewn about in pools of blood and viscera. Hunched over the bodies, crouched Evora soldiers, their mandibles clicking as they tore into the dead. One of the insectoids looked up, human blood dripping from its maw. It let out an ear-piercing shriek. The Evora soldiers surged to their feet, leveling their pulse rifles at Ryan. Blue plasma bolts filled the air as Ryan dove behind a chunk of rubble. Concrete chips sprayed his face. He popped up, sighting down his barrel at the lead Evora. The creature's head exploded in a shower of green ichor as Ryan's round found its mark. Two more Evora dropped, center mass shots stitching their thoraxes. The remaining soldiers closed in, heedless of their losses. Ryan's finger jammed the selector to full auto. The rifle bucked against his shoulder as he hosed the aliens down with a hail of lead. Bullets pinged off the Evora's chitinous armor. A few found weak points and several insectoids crumpled, but there were too many. They just kept coming, skittering over the fallen to get at him. "Shit, shit, shit," Ryan hissed through clenched teeth. He dropped another mag. Just as Ryan slapped his last magazine into the rifle, the shooting stopped. He stood in the sudden silence, panting, Evora bodies littering the ground around him. Green blood mixed with red, forming a sickening sludge on the metal flooring. Ryan keyed his radio. "This is Davis. Hostiles neutralized in Sector 7G. I'm moving to reinforce the comms array. A voice crackled back, high-pitched with panic. Belay that, Davis. This is Dr. Sorensen in the medical bay. We've got wounded civilians here, and those damn bugs are closing in fast. We need backup now. Son of a... Ryan punched the wall in frustration. The colonists in the medbay were sitting ducks, injured, unarmed, helpless. He couldn't leave them to be slaughtered. But if he didn't get that distress beacon out, the whole colony was doomed anyway. The Evora ships in orbit would just keep dropping more troops until the humans were overrun. Ryan closed his eyes for a split second, exhaling sharply through his nose. Then he made the call. Doc, hold tight. I'm on my way. Barricade the doors and keep your head down. He took off at a dead sprint, boots pounding on the decking as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors. The medical bay was on the other side of the colony. He just prayed he'd get there in time. The sounds of renewed fighting grew louder as Ryan approached the med center. Pulse rifle fire screaming, the meaty smacks of bodies hitting the floor. He put on an extra burst of speed, lungs burning. Ryan shouldered through the double doors and stumbled into a charnel house. Dead and dying colonists lay strewn across the room, many still in their hospital beds. Evora soldiers stalked among them, casually executing the survivors with point-blank shots. In the center of the chaos, Dr. Sorensen crouched behind an overturned surgical table. The grey-haired man had his arms wrapped around a small figure. Ryan's heart lurched as he recognized the doctor's young daughter, her blonde hair now matted with blood, her body limp. Something inside Ryan snapped. A primal scream ripped from his throat as he brought his rifle up. The nearest Evora whipped around to face him, but Ryan was already squeezing the trigger. Full auto fire roared from the muzzle, stitching a line from the insectoid's thorax up to its bulbous head. It convulsed as the rounds tore through its body, spraying ichor. The Evora toppled backwards, its limbs spasming. Ryan swung the barrel to the next target, finger jammed on the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder as he hosed the aliens down with a hail of lead. Sparks flew as some of the rounds ricocheted off the Evora's hard exoskeletons, but at this range, even their natural armor couldn't withstand the onslaught. Insectoid bodies jerked and danced as the bullets found weak spots. Chitin splintered. Viscous fluid sprayed. One by one, the Evora crumpled to the decking. Ryan kept firing until the bolt locked back on an empty chamber. Acrid smoke wafted from the rifle's overheated barrel. He stood amidst the carnage, chest heaving, tears of rage stinging his eyes as he stared at the doctor cradling his daughter's body. The Evora had come to Nova Gaia to strip its resources. But in doing so, they had awakened a far more terrible enemy. They had sown the seeds of vengeance in Ryan Davis's heart. And he would not rest until every last one of the murderous insects paid the price. Ryan's rifle roared as he squeezed the trigger, the barrel spitting fire and lead at the Evora warriors. The rounds stitched across the lead insectoid's thorax, cracking its chitinous plates and spilling viscous ichor. It screeched and toppled backwards, legs twitching spasmodically. The other Evora scattered, pulse rifles humming as they charged up. Blue plasma bolts screamed past Ryan's head, sizzling the air. He ducked behind a medical cart, metal shrieking as the shots perforated it. "Doc, get the wounded to the back of the bay, now!" Ryan roared over the din of gunfire. Dr. Sorensen nodded shakily, laying Emily's body down with trembling hands. The doctor scrambled to his feet, herding the few remaining patients behind the dubious shelter of overturned gurneys. Ryan popped up from cover, rifle barking. Another Evora fell, headless, but there were too many. Pulse bolts pounded his position, the medical cart disintegrating under the onslaught. Captain Wiesen strode forward through the chaos, his ornate armor deflecting rounds with contemptuous ease. The Evora commander leveled his massive plasma cannon at Ryan. "Your defiance is futile, human," Wiesen clicked, his mandibles forming a grotesque approximation of a smile. "This colony and its resources belong to the Evora Dominion now. You only delay the inevitable." "Fuck you, Bug," Ryan snarled. "If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me." He lunged from cover, finger jamming the trigger. Weazen staggered as the hail of rounds sparked off his armor, a few finding weak points in the joints. Viscous ichor leaked from the wounds. But the Evora captain shrugged off the hits. His cannon whined as it reached full charge. Ryan's eyes widened. He dove desperately to the side as Weazen fired. A lance of blinding blue-white plasma streaked through the space Ryan had just occupied. It impacted the wall behind him, instantly vaporizing a meter-wide hole clean through the metal. The edges glowed, white-hot. Ryan rolled to his feet, rifle up and searching for a target. But Weazen was gone, vanished into the swirling melee of Evora warriors flooding into the medical bay. Gritting his teeth, Ryan pushed the Evora captain from his mind. First he had to get the civilians out of here. Then he'd hunt down that bug bastard and finish this. He keyed his comms. "Davis, to all security personnel, converge on the medical bay. We need to hold the bugs here while the civilians evacuate." Acknowledgements crackled back. Ryan slammed a fresh mag into his rifle and took aim at the nearest Evora, mandibles slick with human blood. He exhaled, finger caressing the trigger. The alien's head snapped back, ichor spraying as the round found its mark. Ryan moved to the next target and the next, his rifle bucking against his shoulder. Spent shell casings clinked to the floor around his boots. Behind him, Dr. Sorensen and the few able-bodied patients hefted the wounded and made for the rear exits. Plasma bolts sizzled past them, the Evora trying to cut off their escape. "Oh, no you don't, you alien fucks," Ryan growled. He charged forward, hurdling a gurney and dropping into a combat slide. His rifle chattered, rounds chewing through Evora, flesh and chitin. The bugmen screeched in pain and fury, their return fire going wide. Ryan rolled to his feet in their midst, rifle blazing point-blank into alien thoraxes and skulls. Ichor splashed his armor as the Evora crumpled. He whirled, searching for more targets, but the medical bay was clear. The civilians had made it out. Panting, Ryan reloaded and keyed his comms again. "Davis to all units, the med bay is secure. Regroup at—" A thunderous boom rocked the room. Ryan stumbled, ears ringing. He looked up to see a gaping hole where the entrance had been, smoke curling from the edges. Evora warriors poured through the breach, pulse rifles spitting blue death. At their head strode Captain Weazen, his cannon glowing with an angry charge. The warlord fixed his compound eyes on Ryan, mandibles quivering in rage. "Miserable human gnat," Weazen snarled, leveling his cannon. "I will enjoy watching you burn." The plasma bolt shrieked from the barrel, superheated air shimmering in its wake. Ryan hurled himself behind an overturned surgical table, the shot missing him by centimeters. The table's metal surface instantly flash-vaporized, showering him with molten drops. Ryan cursed, patting out the glowing spots on his armor. His rifle had been on the other side of the table. Weaponless, he cast about for anything he could use. His gaze fell on a cylindrical object on the floor, partially hidden under a dead Evora. Ryan's eyes lit up with grim recognition. A plasma scalpel, used for surgery. The device was meant to emit a short-range cutting beam, but if he could boost the power... Ryan scooped up the scalpel and cranked the intensity to maximum. The emitter lens glowed cherry red, sparks spitting from its overloaded circuits. Shouts and pulse rifle shots echoed around him as the security team counterattacked, trying to push the Evora back. Ignoring the chaos, Ryan popped up from behind the table's blasted shell. Captain Weazen stood a dozen meters away, laying down a withering barrage of plasma bolts. The warlord's back was to Ryan. Howling a war cry, Ryan charged. He closed the distance in a few frenzied strides, the overcharged scalpel humming in his grip. Weazen started to turn, his movements sluggish in the heavy armor. Too slow. Ryan slammed the scalpel into the gap beneath Weazen's helmet, where the softer scales of the neck showed. He squeezed the activation stud. The scalpel pulsed, emitting a thin beam of blue-white fire that punched clean through Weazen's neck and out the other side. The Evora captain reared back, ichor gouting from his shattered trachea, mandibles clacking in shock. Ryan leaned in close, lips peeled back in a rictus snarl. "Told you I'd take you with me, Bug." He twisted the scalpel viciously, something vital severed in Wesen's neck. The Evora warlord shuddered and collapsed, his cannon clattering to the decking. Ichor pooled around the body, the stench overwhelming. Ryan stood over his fallen foe, chest heaving with exertion and rage. The battle still raged around him, Evora and humans locked in desperate combat among the wreckage of the medical bay. But the bugs' coordination was faltering now that their leader had fallen. The human security teams pressed the advantage, pulse rifles and frag grenades taking their toll. Ryan scooped up his battered rifle and charged into the fray, a roar of defiance on his lips. The Evora had come to reap a harvest of blood and titanium. Now it was time to show them the true meaning of a human fury. Ryan's finger squeezed the trigger, sending a burst of rounds into the Evora ranks. Wesen's elite guards toppled backwards, ichor spraying from shattered chitin. But the captain himself lunged to the side with inhuman speed, narrowly evading the bullets. "Kill the human filth," Wesen screeched. The remaining Evora warriors leveled their weapons. A storm of plasma fire erupted, the air filling with the stench of ozone. Searing bolts pounded Ryan's position, the metal table buckling under the onslaught. He cursed, ducking lower. At this rate, his cover wouldn't hold for long. Pulse rifle pressed to his shoulder, Ryan popped up to return fire. His shots punched an Evora clean off its feet in a spray of viscera. But 3 more bugs surged forward to take its place, heedless of the carnage. "Shit," Ryan spat. Slapping a fresh mag into his rifle, he prepared to make a final, desperate charge. If he was going down, he'd take as many of these bastards with him as he could. Suddenly the world turned white. A thunderous boom shook the medical bay, hurling Ryan to the floor. His ears rang, vision swimming. He shook his head, trying to clear it. Through the smoke and debris, he glimpsed a massive hole punched in the far wall. Armored figures poured through the gap, the glare of breaching charges still flashing on their visors. "Human Alliance!" one of them roared. "Open fire!" The bark of assault rifles filled the air, the chatter of human weapons a blessed sound. Evora warriors spasmed and dropped as the Marines' rounds found their marks, stitching neat lines of holes in the bugs' carapaces. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Ryan, you still with us, brother?" Captain Jake Simmons vaulted a shattered gurney, his battle-scarred armor smeared with Evora blood. The Marine officer racked the slide on his shotgun, scanning for targets. "Cutting it a little close there, Jake," Ryan called back, relief flooding his veins. He pushed himself to his feet, rifle at the ready. "What's our play?" "We push these bugs back to their ships and off our damn planet," Jake growled. He pumped a shell into the nearest Evora, blasting it off its feet. "You with me?" Ryan nodded grimly. "Till the end." Together the 2 Marines advanced, firing as they went. The Evora line buckled, then shattered under the human assault. Bug warriors scrambled for cover, suddenly on the defensive. Wesen's voice rose above the din, shrill with rage. "Cowards, stand and fight!" The Evora captain charged from the chaos, plasma pistol blazing. A Marine to Ryan's left went down, his chest a smoking ruin. Wesen bore down on Ryan, compound eyes burning with hate. Ryan met the alien's charge with his own. The 2 collided like freight trains, Wesen's claws scrabbling at Ryan's armor. Ryan slammed the butt of his rifle into the bug's face once, twice, feeling chitin crack. Wesen reeled back, ichor streaming from a fractured mandible. But the Evora lashed out with a taloned foot, ripping the gun from Ryan's hands. They crashed to the deck in a tangle of limbs, grappling and pummeling. Ryan felt chitin splinter under his fists. A serrated claw raked his shoulder, drawing blood. He headbutted the captain, the Evora's exoskeleton crunching. Wesen screeched in pain and fury. The world narrowed to the 2 of them, straining against each other in a battle of sheer strength and savagery. Ryan ended up on top, pinning Wesen to the deck. He pressed the barrel of his sidearm to the Evora's head, right between its hate-filled eyes. Wesen went still, mandibles quivering. The bug knew it was beaten. Ryan's finger tightened on the trigger, every fiber of his being screaming to blow the alien's brains out and splatter them across the floor. But then he heard a soft keen of grief from behind him. He glanced back to see Dr. Sorensen still cradling his daughter's body, shoulders shaking with sobs. The girl's blonde hair fanned out around her too pale face. The rage drained from Ryan in a rush, leaving him feeling hollow. Killing Weason wouldn't undo this horror, wouldn't bring that innocent child back. There had been enough death today. "No," he said hoarsely, lowering his gun. "I won't stoop to your level. You'll face justice for what you've done here." He hauled the unresisting Evora to its feet and shoved it at a pair of Marines. "Get this piece of shit out of my sight and someplace secure." As the soldiers dragged Weason away, Ryan stumbled over to Dr. Sorensen. He helped the shaking man lift Emily's body onto a waiting stretcher, arranging her as gently as if she were only sleeping. Together, they draped a sheet over her still form. Around them, the Marines consolidated their hold on the medical bay, tending to the wounded and securing the perimeter. The sounds of battle still filtered in from other parts of the colony, but for now, this section was safe. Ryan looked down at the small shrouded figure on the stretcher, and the weight of the day's horrors pressed down on him like a physical thing. So many lives lost, so much destruction and pain. And for what? A few scraps of metal and rock. He turned to stare out a viewport at the stars glimmering coldly in the void. The Alliance had won this battle, but the cost had been far, far too high. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.